Us now, Brad Garlinghouse is the CEO of the cryptocurrency developer Ripple. Ripple's XRP token has surged more than 500% this year. Brad, nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, just tell people what exactly Ripple does, because it's not just the currency, also you're very involved in blockchain.
Absolutely. So Ripple sells a blockchain technology to banks and payment providers and other financial institutions to do real-time settlement between banks.
Well, the wall just cracked. Thunes, one of Ripple's key partners in global remittances, just connected directly with Swift's massive network of 11,000 banks. Read that again. 11,000 banks. This isn't just another fintech partnership. It's a backdoor, a bridge, a quiet link that might finally put XRP on the same rails that the entire global banking system runs on. And here's the wild part, no one's talking about it. Because to most people, it sounds too technical. Thunes integrates with Swift. But to those who understand the financial plumbing, this is a potential banking-level Trojan horse for Ripple. Let's break down how that works. Most people didn't notice it. It wasn't trending on X. It didn't cause a price spike. It didn't have any fireworks attached. But quietly, Ripple just made one of the most strategic moves in its entire history, and it happened through a company most people barely know, Thunes. Now, if you've been following Ripple for a while, you already know the story. For years, Ripple has been trying to modernize how banks move money across borders. They've been saying it loud and clear. The current system is outdated, expensive, and painfully slow. But here's the part people miss. Changing the global banking system isn't just about technology. It's about relationships. And relationships in finance are like trust. They take years to build, but one good connection can open thousands of doors. That's what just happened here. Let's unpack this quietly massive deal. Thunes, a global payment infrastructure company based in Singapore, is now connected directly to Swift, the backbone of the international financial world. Swift, for decades, has been the standard messaging system that lets banks in different countries talk to each other and move trillions of dollars every single day. And Thunes? They're already partnered with Ripple. Their payment network uses Ripple's tech to help move value instantly across over 130 countries. So, in simple terms, Ripple is connected to Thunes. Thunes is now connected to Swift. That's the link. And that's why this changes everything. Because Ripple didn't have to fight its way into Swift. It didn't have to challenge it directly. Instead, through Thunes, it just plugged in. Why this matters more than it sounds. At first glance, this might look like just another corporate partnership headline. But if you zoom out, it's one of the most important steps toward Ripple's long-term goal. Integrating blockchain technology into traditional finance without forcing banks to completely rewire how they operate. Think about it like this. The biggest problem Ripple faced wasn't that its technology didn't work. It's that banks didn't want to deal with the headache of adopting something new. Banks run on old systems. They've been using the same messaging standards for decades, and they don't just flip a switch for something different. Every update involves regulators, compliance, audits, and huge amounts of red tape. That's why Ripple's partnership with Thunes is so clever. By connecting to a player that's already trusted and integrated into the global banking system, Ripple gets to extend its reach without causing disruption. It's the difference between knocking on a locked door and finding someone who already has a key. So what exactly does Thunes do? Thunes acts as a global connector for cross-border payments. They're not a bank, they're the infrastructure that makes it easier for money to move between banks, fintechs, and digital wallets in different countries. Their network spans Africa, Asia, Latin America, and beyond. And now that they're tied into Swift, they can facilitate payments to and from over 11,000 banks worldwide. Now layer Ripple on top of that. RippleNet already enables instant settlement between institutions using blockchain technology, powered by XRP. So when Thunes routes payments using Ripple's network, it's using XRP's liquidity to bridge currencies and clear transactions faster than traditional systems ever could. That means Ripple doesn't have to connect to every single bank in the world. It can connect through Thunes and reach most of them anyway. That's the kind of scaling you don't brag about. You just build it quietly until one day, everyone realizes the pipes are already connected. Swift's changing too, and Ripple knows it. Here's the part that's even more interesting. Swift itself is evolving. The entire SWIFT network is moving to the ISO 20022 messaging standard, a new, more flexible, data-rich format that just happens to align perfectly with the same standard Ripple already uses. So what we're seeing isn't competition anymore, it's convergence. SWIFT and Ripple are no longer speaking completely different languages. They're becoming interoperable. When systems speak the same language, connecting them becomes exponentially easier. And that's exactly what's happening right now, beneath the surface. Ripple doesn't have to replace SWIFT. It can enhance it. That's a huge shift from the old Ripple versus SWIFT narrative that dominated years ago. Banks don't like risk, they like trust. And this is the part that truly matters for XRP's future. Banks aren't emotional. They don't move based on hype or community excitement. They move when they feel safe, when they trust the system they're connecting to. Ripple's relationship with Thunes gives them something Ripple could never buy with marketing: trust by association. Thunes already works with central banks, fintechs, and regulators around the world. They're a bridge company, and now that they're plugged into SWIFT, Ripple's technology gets exposure to that same trust layer. So the question isn't whether banks will use Ripple's rails. It's when they'll realize they already are. Because once Thunes routes payments through RippleNet for SWIFT-connected institutions, those banks are essentially transacting through Ripple's infrastructure, whether they know it or not. That's the quiet genius of it all. It's not about headlines, it's about positioning. This is how real power moves. Not through hype, not through to-the-moon predictions, through quiet, strategic alignment. Ripple has always known it couldn't fight the banking system head-on. You don't topple something that's been running the world's money for 50 years. You integrate with it and then make it better from the inside out. And that's exactly what's happening here. Ripple's technology is slipping into the global payments bloodstream. Not loudly, but effectively. And by the time most people notice, it'll already be everywhere. So while the headlines talk about ETFs and price predictions, the real story, the infrastructure story, is being written behind closed doors. Thunes is the pen. SWIFT is the paper. And Ripple? Ripple is the invisible ink that'll show up when the light finally hits it. To really understand what's happening between Ripple, Thunes, and SWIFT, you have to think about money movement not as something abstract, but as a literal system of pipes. When you send money from one country to another, say, from London to Lagos or from Dubai to Delhi, that money doesn't fly through the air. It moves through a complex web of financial institutions, message systems, correspondent banks, and intermediaries. Each one takes a cut, adds delay, and increases the chance of error. That web is what SWIFT has controlled for decades. But here's the problem. It was built in the 1970s. The world has changed since then. Transactions that used to take days now need to happen in seconds. And people are done waiting. That's where companies like Ripple and connectors like Thunes come in. Let's break this down simply. SWIFT is the language banks use to talk to each other. It doesn't actually move money. It just sends messages that tell banks what to do. Thunes is a connector. It makes it possible for money to move quickly between financial institutions, digital wallets, and banks across more than 130 countries. Ripple provides the rails, the blockchain technology that allows value to actually settle instantly, using XRP as the bridge currency between fiat systems. Now, when Thunes connects with SWIFT, and Thunes already uses RippleNet, something subtle but powerful happens. Ripple's rails suddenly gain access, indirectly but effectively, to the entire SWIFT ecosystem. That's 11,000 banks. Trillions in daily volume. All potentially one integration away from blockchain settlement. No revolution. No fight. Just interoperability. Think of it like this. Imagine the world's financial system as a massive city of skyscrapers. Each building represents a bank, and SWIFT is the road network that connects them. Ripple built high-speed trains, but those trains needed tracks, and the city didn't want to rebuild all its roads. So Ripple found Thunes, a company that already had permission to operate on both roads and rails. Now Thunes has connected its roads to SWIFT's main highway system, and Ripple's trains? They're already on Thunes' network. So without forcing the city to change, Ripple's technology just gained a path into every skyscraper that matters. That's how systems change, not by tearing everything down, but by quietly upgrading the connections between what already exists. Ripple's biggest challenge has always been adoption friction. The tech is fast, reliable, and regulatory compliant, but banks are conservative by nature. You can show them all the charts, all the case studies, and they'll still say, "Looks great." But who else is using it? That's the real bottleneck, trust. And the fastest way to build trust isn't with advertising or white papers. It's by being where the trust already lives. That's what Thunes and Swift represent. Thunes already works with banks, fintechs, and regulators in over 130 countries. They've passed the compliance tests. They've built the relationships. Swift has been the trusted network for over 50 years. Every bank on Earth knows it. So when Ripple plugs into Thunes, and Thunes plugs into Swift, the trust barrier starts to crumble. Banks don't even have to know they're using Ripple's rails, it just works. And that's where adoption becomes exponential. If you're new to how money moves across borders, here's something that might surprise you. Most financial institutions don't settle payments themselves. When a US bank sends money to a bank in Nigeria, it doesn't send money. It sends instructions through Swift. The actual funds move through a series of correspondent banks in between. That's why international transfers can take 2 to 5 days and cost ridiculous fees. Each middleman adds friction, markup, and delay. Now, imagine replacing that multi-step relay race with a single blockchain transaction. Instant, transparent, traceable, and secure. That's what RippleNet offers. And Thunes makes it possible for that capability to plug directly into the existing banking system. So instead of ripping out Swift, Ripple is simply completing it. They're making the old system better by filling in the missing piece. Fast, final settlement. That's a far more effective strategy than trying to destroy the incumbent. Swift's limitations are Ripple's opportunities. Swift's biggest strength, being trusted by every bank, is also its biggest weakness. Because when you're that big, you move slowly. Upgrades take years. Consensus takes forever. Meanwhile, smaller fintechs like Thunes can move fast, experiment, and integrate new technologies like RippleNet without bureaucracy slowing them down. So Ripple doesn't need Swift to officially adopt them. They just need to exist alongside them, connected through a partner that's agile enough to play both sides. That's exactly what Thunes is doing. And it's why this moment is far more powerful than it looks on the surface. Because while most people think crypto adoption will happen through government announcements or massive headlines, the truth is it's happening through connectors. Companies like Thunes are quietly stitching blockchain and banking together, one API, one corridor, one integration at a time. And once those connections are made, they don't unmake themselves. Ripple doesn't want to fight Swift anymore, it wants to upgrade it. Back in the early days, the crypto narrative was simple. Ripple versus Swift. New versus old. Speed versus tradition. But the world doesn't move that way anymore. Instead of battles, we're seeing mergers of function. Ripple has matured. It doesn't need to destroy Swift. It just needs to make Swift's network faster, smarter, and more liquid. That's what Thunes enables. Every bank that uses Swift can now, in theory, access RippleNet's instant settlement layer through Thunes. And since Ripple is ISO 20022 compliant, just like Swift's upgraded messaging format, the integration becomes almost seamless. That's how Ripple wins. Not through revolution, but through evolution. Now, let's connect the dots for XRP holders. When payments are routed through RippleNet, XRP often acts as the bridge asset between currencies. For example, when Thunes helps move money from Kenya to India, Ripple's network can use XRP to convert Kenyan shillings to Indian rupees instantly. Every time that happens, it drives utility. And utility is what ultimately drives long-term value. So when Thunes connects RippleNet's rails to Swift's vast network of banks, that's not just a technical win. It's a potential demand engine for XRP itself. It's not speculation. It's infrastructure. Because every bank that touches Thunes and Ripple's technology is one step closer to using XRP. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And once that bridge is in place, all it takes is one policy update, one regional trial, or one partnership expansion to unlock massive new corridors of liquidity. That's the beauty of building infrastructure. The payoff doesn't come from hype, it comes from inevitability. The world won't notice until it's already using it. And maybe that's the most important part of this whole story. By the time mainstream media catches on, this system will already be live. Payments will already be moving. And Ripple's technology will already be working quietly behind the scenes. This isn't a future thing anymore. It's unfolding right now. Swift keeps the old pipes running. Thunes connects those pipes to the new world. And Ripple provides the liquidity engine that makes the flow instant. That's how XRP gets closer to banks than ever before. Not by shouting louder, but by simply becoming too useful to ignore. For years, the story around Ripple was about potential. Maybe one day banks will use blockchain. But today, it's not a maybe anymore, it's integration. It's execution. It's happening through partnerships that most people don't even understand the depth of. Swift doesn't need to announce Ripple for this to matter. Thunes doesn't need to make XRP headlines for it to be impactful. All that matters is that Ripple's rails, the same rails powered by XRP, are being woven into the system that already runs the world's money. And when you're building something that foundational, you don't need to shout about it. You just keep building. The world runs on trust, not technology. It's easy to think this is just about speed or fees, but it's not. The reason banks are moving slowly toward crypto isn't because they can't see the benefits. It's because they have to protect trust. And that's why Ripple's path, this slow, regulatory-first, compliance-heavy route, was the only one that could ever actually succeed. Look at it this way. While 99% of the crypto world was chasing hype cycles, Ripple was sitting in courtrooms, meeting with regulators, building ISO 20022 frameworks, and signing enterprise contracts with banks. That's not flashy work, but it's the kind that builds permanence. So when the Thunes Swift connection surfaced, it wasn't some random event. It was a sign that the work Ripple put in, the slow, steady, frustrating work, is finally starting to pay off. Because now, the traditional system doesn't have to switch to Ripple. It can simply flow through Ripple. That's a quiet victory, the kind that sneaks up on people until one day, everyone realizes how deep the integration has gone. The best opportunities always look boring at first. If you tell someone today, Swift is integrating through Thunes, which connects to RippleNet, their eyes might glaze over. It sounds too technical, too distant from price action. But that's exactly what makes it powerful. The deeper the infrastructure move, the less obvious it looks until it's too late. Think back to the early internet. The biggest companies didn't announce themselves with fireworks. They just quietly built the roads and servers that everyone else ended up using. Amazon started as an online bookstore. Google started as a university project. They looked boring until the world realized everything was built on them. That's exactly where XRP sits today. Not a meme, not a get-rich-quick scheme, but an invisible backbone forming under the next generation of finance. And the investors who can see that, who can look past the noise, are the ones who will wake up one morning and realize the system they believed in actually won. Patience isn't easy, but it's the only strategy that works in revolutions. The crypto market tests conviction like nothing else. You can do all the research, see all the signs, but if the price doesn't move, doubt starts whispering. Maybe it's all just theory. Maybe it's too early. Maybe XRP will never actually be used. But what's unfolding with Ripple, Thunes, and Swift is the exact opposite of theory. It's adoption in motion. It's real-world use cases being built on real financial plumbing. You don't rebuild the global banking system overnight. But when you start connecting pieces like Thunes' instant payment network with Ripple's settlement layer, and now Swift's messaging infrastructure, what you're really doing is laying the tracks for inevitability. It might take months, it might take years. But when it happens, it will feel instant because everything will already be in place. The investors who win are the ones who think in infrastructure, not hype. Here's the mental shift that separates traders from visionaries. Traders chase green candles. Visionaries understand infrastructure moments. When Visa integrated with USDC, when PayPal adopted blockchain rails, when governments started testing CBDCs, those weren't price moments. They were foundation moments. The Thunes, Swift, Ripple link is one of those. It's the foundation being quietly laid beneath the world's money flow. So, if you're holding XRP right now, it's not about hoping for the next pump. It's about recognizing you're holding the asset that's designed to move value the way Swift moves information. But faster, cheaper, smarter. And if that sounds too quiet to matter, remember, all revolutions look like whispers before they sound like thunder. Let's be honest, being early is lonely. You talk about XRP and people call it a banker's coin. You mention ISO 20022 and people's eyes glaze over. You show real partnerships, and they ask why the price hasn't exploded yet. But that's how all paradigm shifts feel before they break. No one believed in the internet until their job depended on it. No one believed in smartphones until they became a lifestyle. And no one will believe in blockchain-based settlements until their bank uses it without even telling them. That's the level Ripple is playing at. And that's why patience isn't weakness, it's strategy. Because every integration, every compliance framework, every handshake between Ripple and a global institution is another brick in the foundation of something the market still underestimates. You're not late, you're in the middle of history. The Thunes-Swift partnership is just one headline. But if you zoom out, you'll see the bigger picture forming. The financial world isn't rejecting blockchain, it's absorbing it. And Ripple's role in that shift is becoming more undeniable by the day. For XRP holders, that's the validation that patience wasn't wasted. You didn't miss the moment. You are the moment, just early enough to feel uncertain before the rest of the world catches up. So hold your conviction, because while everyone's waiting for the fireworks, you're already standing on the launch pad. That's the paradox of being early. It feels boring right up until it doesn't. And that's why this Thunes-Swift development matters more than people think. Because it's not just another partnership. It's a sign that the financial world is learning how to absorb blockchain, not reject it, not compete with it, but absorb it in a way that upgrades the system without breaking it. Ripple didn't build something to replace banks. It built something banks could use without fear. And that's how you win. The shift isn't coming. It's happening. The world's payment systems aren't preparing to change in 10 years. They're already changing right now, just not in a way that's flashy or dramatic. You've got Ripple integrating ISO 20022. You've got Thunes bridging local payment networks across 130-plus countries. You've got Swift updating its messaging layer to talk to the same systems RippleNet already understands. This isn't theory. It's architecture. And that's the part most investors overlook, because you can't trade architecture. You can only recognize it, position yourself for it, and wait. So while others are chasing headlines and meme cycles, the real investors are watching the pipes, the flow of value itself, and seeing Ripple quietly line up every major corridor that matters. When those corridors open fully, liquidity will need to move fast, instantly, globally, and that's where XRP's utility shines. Because XRP isn't designed to speculate. It's designed to settle. That's the entire point. If this sounds slow, it's because it's meant to be. You can't rebuild global trust overnight. You can't make 11,000 banks flip a switch all at once. But what you can do is connect one bridge at a time. Thunes here, Swift there, a central bank pilot in the middle, until one day everything just clicks. And when that day comes, it won't look like a revolution. That's how deep infrastructure wins. It doesn't seek credit. It becomes invisible because it's everywhere. And that's where Ripple is heading, becoming the invisible layer of trust beneath global payments. For XRP holders, that's not just exciting, that's generational. The difference between hype and inevitability. Every cycle has hype, but inevitability feels different. Hype depends on attention. Inevitability happens whether people are watching or not. Ripple's partnerships with Thunes and Swift aren't designed to make traders excited. They're designed to make institutions comfortable, to make blockchain normal, to make digital settlement as trusted as paper money used to be. And when that happens, XRP's true role begins, not as a speculative coin, but as the heartbeat of instant liquidity between currencies. That's what makes this moment powerful. Because even though the market still treats XRP like just another token, the world's largest financial networks are starting to treat it like infrastructure. You're watching history in motion, from the inside. If you've been holding XRP, researching, or even just staying curious through all the noise, you're already doing something most people can't. You're watching the slow birth of a system that will outlive the hype cycles. It's easy to lose patience when everything else seems to be moving faster. New tokens, new narratives, new promises. But remember this, the slowest builders usually create the systems that last the longest. That's what Ripple is doing. And that's what the Thunes Swift connection confirms. The financial system isn't fighting blockchain anymore. It's adapting to it. And the blockchain it's adapting to looks a lot like Ripple's. So what should you take from this? Patience isn't just a virtue here, it's a competitive advantage. Because the minute this ecosystem goes mainstream, the opportunity for asymmetric growth disappears. By the time everyone sees the full picture, the upside will already be absorbed into the infrastructure itself. So this isn't a moment to chase hype. It's a moment to stay aware, to understand what's quietly happening beneath the noise, and to position yourself mentally for what's coming next. Because what's happening with Ripple, Thunes, and Swift isn't random. It's the blueprint for how blockchain goes mainstream. And XRP holders? You're not just speculating anymore. You're participating in the foundation of something the financial world will eventually depend on. If this connected with you, if you see the bigger picture forming, drop a comment below. Tell me how long you've been following Ripple's journey. Tell me when you first realized XRP wasn't just another coin, but a piece of the global payments puzzle. Because the truth is, communities like ours are what keep this movement alive. We see what others miss. We track what others dismiss. And one day, when this system finally flips fully to blockchain settlement, we'll look back and realize, this was the moment it all started to come together. So stay grounded, stay patient, and remember, sometimes the biggest financial revolutions don't start with fireworks. They start with a quiet partnership. That changes everything.